Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The blade shattered against the marble floor, the sharp sound echoing like a gunshot, but it was nothing compared to the deafening roar of the monster currently tearing the room apart. A monster that, only moments ago, had been my best friend. "Cashin, look at me!" I screamed, my voice cracking under the weight of the oppressive, suffocating pressure filling the ballroom. He didn't hear me. He couldn't. The man standing amidst the wreckage of the High Council's gala wasn't the composed, stoic commander of the Imperial Guard I had grown up with. His eyes, usually a piercing, intelligent blue, were now blown wide, the pupils slit and feral, glowing with a violet luminescence that signaled a catastrophic alpha overload. He was drowning in his own power, a biological weapon whose safety catch had finally snapped. Bodies of assassins lay strewn about him, broken by his bare hands, but he was still hunting, his head snapping side to side, searching for a threat that no longer existed. Or perhaps he was searching for the one thing his instincts told him was in danger. Me. I pressed my back against the cold pillar, clutching the fabric of my suit over my chest. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I could feel the heat rising beneath my skin, the terrifying, familiar burn that I had suppressed for 10 years with illegal drugs and agonizing discipline. "Not now," I begged silently, biting my lip until the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. "Please, not now. If I stepped out from behind this pillar, if I let him smell the blood, the lie I had lived would be over. The carefully constructed reality where I was Julian, the useless, non-magical beta friend of the Empire's strongest alpha, would disintegrate." But Cashin let out a guttural growl, raising a hand wreathed in unstable telekinetic energy toward the cowering nobles on the balcony. He was going to kill them all. He was going to massacre the entire court because his instincts were screaming that his mate was in danger, and his conscious mind didn't know who that mate was. I had no choice. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small, silver case containing my suppressants, and crushed it in my hand. The glass vials shattered, the liquid dripping uselessly onto the floor. I stepped out into the open. To understand why I was about to ruin my life, you have to understand the lie. In the stratified world of Ethelgard, biology was destiny. Alphas ruled, betas worked, and omegas. Omegas were resources, rare, cherished, and utterly stripped of agency. They were batteries for the volatile magic of high alphas. To be an omega was to be placed in a gilded cage, assigned a mate by the council, and bred for power. I was born an omega, a primordial omega, the rarest kind, capable of amplifying an alpha's power to godlike levels. My parents, terrified of the life awaiting me, forged my papers. They bought black market suppressants that dulled my scent, stunted my growth, and hid my aura. They raised me as Julian, the sickly beta boy, and then I met Cashin. We were 7 when he found me hiding in the library archives, crying because a group of older cadets had pushed me into the mud. Cashin was already tall for his age, radiating the early signs of a dominant alpha. He didn't ask what happened. He just walked out to the courtyard, broke the nose of the ringleader, and came back to sit with me. "Stop crying," he had said, his voice rough even then. "I'm here now." That was the dynamic for 20 years. Cashin, the prodigy. Julian, the shadow. He dragged me along with him, refusing to let me fall behind. When he was accepted into the elite military academy, he threatened to decline his admission unless they allowed me to enter as a scribe. When he became the youngest commander in history, he hired me as his personal strategist. Everyone whispered about it. Why does the Wolf of Ethelgard keep that weakling around? What use is a beta who can't even lift a sword? Cashin never answered them. He simply glared until they looked away. But I saw the way he watched me. I felt the intensity of his gaze when I walked into a room. He was possessive, hovering over me with an intensity that baffled even him. He would touch the small of my back to guide me through crowds, his hand lingering too long. He would wake up from nightmares and immediately call me, needing to hear my voice to settle his racing heart. He thought it was loyalty. He thought it was friendship. I knew better. Every time he stood close to me, my suppressants fought a war against my biology. My inner self, my soul, recognized him. We were fated. A bond written in the stars and woven into our DNA. His instincts knew I was his. His conscious mind just couldn't reconcile that the scentless, fragile beta was actually the perfect match for his chaotic soul. I lived in terror of the day he would find out. Because if Cashin knew, he wouldn't reject me. No, it would be worse. He would burn the world down to keep me, and the council would execute us both for treason. The flashback shattered as a wave of kinetic force threw me backward. I hit the ground hard, sliding across the polished floor of the ballroom. Cashin! I shouted again, pushing myself up on trembling arms. The Alpha stood 20 feet away. The violet light in his eyes was blinding now. The air around him crackled with ozone and static. He had lost the ability to distinguish friend from foe. The assassins had used a neurotoxin designed to trigger a frenzy state, a suicide induced for alphas. Without an anchor to ground him, his heart would explode within minutes. He turned toward me. For a second, there was no recognition, just a predator assessing prey. He raised his hand, the air warping around his fingers as he prepared to crush my windpipe. I stood up, shaking. I closed my eyes and did the one thing I had sworn never to do. I dropped the mental shields. Felt like breaking a dam. The agony of the suppressants vanished, replaced by a rush of heat so intense I gasped. My scent, hidden for 2 decades, exploded outward. It wasn't the sweet, floral scent of a common omega. It was heavy, dark, and intoxicating. It smelled of rain on hot pavement, of crushed herbs, of deep, ancient forests. It was the scent of a primordial. The shockwave of pheromones hit Cashin like a physical blow. He froze. His hand, raised to kill me, trembled. The violet glow in his eyes flickered. Julian. The name was a rasp, torn from a throat raw with screaming. "It's me, Cass," I whispered, stepping over the shattered glass. "It's me." The court was silent. The nobles cowering on the balcony were staring, their mouths agape. They could smell it too. The secret was out. But I didn't care about them. I only cared about the man fighting a war inside his own skull. Cashin dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "Get back!" he snarled, his voice distorting. "Run. Julian, run." I can't hold it back. I'm not running. I walked right up to him. The energy coming off him was searing, hot enough to singe the fabric of my clothes, but I pushed through the pain. I knelt in front of him, the glass cutting into my knees, and took his face in my hands. His skin was burning. He looked at me, and for the first time he really saw me. The pupils of his eyes dilated until the blue was almost gone, swallowed by black. He inhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring as he took in the scent he had been unknowingly searching for his entire life. "You!" he breathed, the word trembling with a mix of horror and reverence. "It was you. It was always you." "I'm sorry," I said, tears spilling onto my cheeks. "I'm sorry I hid it." "Why?" he choked out. A tear of his own, hot as magma, fell onto my thumb. I would have torn the stars down for you." "I know," I whispered. "That's why I hid." The neurotoxin surged again. Cashin's back arched, a scream of agony ripping from his chest. The telekinetic energy spiked, cracking the ceiling above us. "Let me in," I commanded, my voice resonating with an authority I didn't know I possessed. The instinct of the primordial took over. Cashin dropped the walls. "Bond with me." "It will kill you," he gasped. "I'm too strong." "You won't kill me," I said firmly, pressing my forehead against his. "You've been protecting me since we were 7 years old. You knew what I was before I did. Your soul knew. Trust it." I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. As our lips met, the world turned white. The bond, dormant and starved for 20 years, snapped into place with the force of a thunderclap. I felt his mind slam into mine. A chaotic storm of rage, pain, and overwhelming, terrifying love. He felt mine. The fear, the deception, the desperate adoration I had kept locked in a box. The energy swirling around the room didn't disappear. It funneled. It rushed into me, filtered through my essence, and flowed back into him, calmed and controlled. The violet light in his eyes faded, replaced by his natural, deep ocean blue. But now they shone with a clarity that was terrifying in its focus. He broke the kiss but didn't let me go. One arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me flush against his armor, while his other hand buried itself in my hair, tilting my head back to bare my neck. "Mine!" he growled, the sound vibrating through my chest. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact that echoed louder than the destruction around us. "Yours!" I surrendered. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply, grounding himself in my scent. The feral tension left his shoulders, replaced by the lethal, calculated composure of the commander. But the way he held me, that was new. That was the grip of a starving man who had finally been given a feast. Slowly, the silence of the room crept back in. "Commander Valerian," a trembling voice called out from the balcony. It was the High Chancellor. That is an Omega. You are harboring an unregistered primordial." Cassian didn't look up. He kept his face buried in my neck, his lips brushing the pulse point that hammered beneath my skin. "Commander," the Chancellor's voice grew sharper, emboldened by the presence of the royal guards flooding into the hall. "Step away from the Omega. He is property of the state. He must be taken into custody for evaluation and reassignment." Cassian went still. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Slowly, Cassian lifted his head. He stood up, pulling me with him, keeping me tucked securely under his arm. He looked up at the balcony, at the most powerful men in the Empire. He didn't look like a soldier anymore. He looked like a king. "Reassignment," Cassian repeated, the word rolling off his tongue with a dark, amused cruelty. He stepped forward, the glass crunching beneath his boots. The pressure returned, not the chaotic explosion from before, but a heavy, directed weight that forced the guards to their knees. "For 20 years, Cassian said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. "I wondered why I felt a phantom pain whenever he was out of my sight. I wondered why I couldn't sleep unless I knew he was safe. I wondered why I slaughtered entire battalions just because they looked at him wrong." He looked down at me, his eyes softening for a fraction of a second before snapping back to the Chancellor with lethal intent. "I thought I was insane," Cassian continued. "I thought I was broken, but I was just a wolf guarding a treasure I couldn't see." "Commander, this is treason," the Chancellor shrieked. "Hand him over." Cassian smiled. It was a terrifying expression, full of sharp teeth and promised violence. "You seem to misunderstand the situation, Chancellor," Cassian said softly. "I am not asking for permission to keep him." The telekinetic energy flared, ripping the weapons out of the hands of the approaching guards and bending the steel barrels into useless scrap metal. "I am informing you," Cassian declared, his voice thundering like a judgment from the gods, "that if anyone tries to touch him, if anyone even looks at him with the intent to take him from me, I will not just kill them." He pulled me closer, his hands splaying possessively over my chest, right over my heart. "I will dismantle this empire brick by brick until there is nothing left but dust. He is my anchor. He is my soul. And he has been mine since the day I first drew breath." Cassian turned his back on the Chancellor, dismissing the entire government of Ethelgard as if they were insects. He looked at me, his thumb brushing a smudge of dirt from my cheek. "Let's go home, Julian," he murmured. "They'll come for us?" I whispered, glancing back at the stunned court. "You just declared war on the world." Cassian's eyes darkened, possessiveness swirling in their depths. He leaned down, his lips grazing my ear. "Let them come," he whispered. "Now that I know what you are, now that I know why I've always bled for you, let them come." I'll paint the streets red before I let you go again. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian finally take his place and Cassian destroy everything for him, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you risk an entire empire to keep the one person who was made for you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,